let's give some history of trade. This is world trade as a share of GDP. It's the sum of imports and exports. But of course, for the world as a whole, imports and exports are equal. So it's actually, in a way, it's redundant. But anyway, it gives you the picture. And what you see is a couple of things. First, globalization does not always move forward. The world had substantially more trade in 1913, before World War I, than it did in 1950. The world was a much more integrated place in 1913 than it was soon after World War II. That's because, such as it was, the global economic order had broken down. There was more protectionism all around. It took a long time to recover. The GATT was founded in 1947. There were many, many rounds of trade negotiations. It really wasn't until the 1980s that world trade was back to its levels of 1913. So there was really about a 70-year period when trade was below the levels it had had on the eve of World War I. All of the gains in trade that took place up until around 1980 were just recovering that lost ground. What followed after that, after about 1990, we had a really dramatic takeoff in trade. After about 1990, you had something that was truly new. So we talk about modern technology, the world has gotten smaller, and it's true, but you really couldn't see that in the data until after about 1990. That's when you start the process some people call hyperglobalization. And hyperglobalization is mostly involves complicated international value chains. It involves something, if we go back to 1913, trade was, Britain sent manufactured goods to New Zealand, and New Zealand sent wool and lamb back to Britain. It was fairly simple. You had goods going back and forth, final goods. In the modern world, we have a lot of trade, which is you produce something, which is a component, into something else, which is then sent to someplace else, which is then sent to someplace else. So this thing, which I carry, like everybody else, in my pocket, is it a Chinese product? Well, the last step in the assembly is in China, but only a few dollars of the price of the phone is actually Chinese. There's actually a substantially larger South Korean component in the phone. There's a lot of Japanese value in there. There's a fair bit of American value in there as well.